Well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. Here to discuss Worm chapters 7.3 and 7.4. Some nice quiet chapters. Hardly any violence compared to what normally happens. I mean, what?
Yeah. And
And there we go. It is posted.
Yep. There we go. So yeah, I'll start the speed draw. Looks like we already got 2 + 4 × 5 here.
Oh my gosh.
I don't have works today, so I can be here for the full thing. Cool.
Yeah, we'll be glad to have you.
So the audience participation reminder, as Waldo, 2 + 4 × 5 on the Discord had pointed out, I hadn't posted it there, but it was, discuss the outing of the Empire 88 secret identities and the rules of the cops and robbers game.
I think that'll provoke some discussion. It'd be great.
Yep. And, let's see here. So, moving to the themes real quick. I could only think of one that I kind of, well, it's like 2 that I combined into one because they're like so related. But Cape showmanship and then reputation. They do some old Cape trickery, fake powers, with the bug body. Cause somebody an injury that looks worse than it is and gets like blood in their eyes to sell the intimidation. And it's like, all about the theatrics of what she's doing in a way, rather than like actually hurting them as bad as she possibly could. Well,
I mean, that'll feed into the cops and robbers stuff that we talk about later. Really is that you want to appear as intimidating and as dangerous as possible, but you don't want to actually cash that in and really hurt people.
Right, exactly. And so you can see this is the art was Taylor moving the bugs in mid pile up. So yeah, pretty cool.
Just have them crawl all over Taylor.
I mean, I really love bugs, so this is perfect. But then yes, also in addition to that, the reputation portion is you are not late at all. We're still on the themes. We're this. You only missed like 1 or 2 lines of stuff. But yes, Vale, I'll reread the audience participation real quick. Just discuss the outing of the Empire 88 secret identities and the rules of the cops and robbers game. So now you haven't missed anything.
But yeah, as far as themes go, besides the showmanship and reputation, I don't think there's anything else super strong to hit here. There's the cops and robbers that we'll talk about again as well. And the only other thing I think isn't so much a theme as a recurring thing, which is the Taylor's Toolbox, which we'll probably also talk about in Powers and World Building.
Oh yeah. We should talk about that. I haven't brought that up in a while, but yeah, I think we're probably and Vale says, by the way, art is amazing as always. Indeed. I think we're ready to start the 7.3 segment.
All right. You want to take it off the bat?
Sure. Taylor's feeling an air of anxiety. It's lunchtime. The things Taylor decides to be scared of are so whack. Not scared of small enclosed spaces, is scared of lunchtime.
Not scared of spiders. Scared of bullies.
Yeah.
Or just, any sort of social contact. But Indeed. Taylor returns back to the dog warehouse with lunch in hand and is relieved to find nothing horrible is happening. Yet. She offers Rachel her food. The ladies sit on the deteriorating concrete wall facing out the fenced off back of the yard where the dogs can frolic.
Yeah. Taylor small talks with a dog who politely begs for a bite of her wrap. She tells the dog that even though they're so cute, it can't have any of the wrap. And then this statement strangely triggers Rachel, who tells Taylor that she should never own a dog. And then Vic had put here, Rachel's also like the only character in Worm who uses the R slur. Yeah, and a lot.
You'd think that Alec would use it, to be honest, but
yeah, and maybe I haven't like gone ahead and looked into it too much, but I mean, it sounds right when I read it from the note here. Rachel says that most dog owners pick a dog because it's cute and don't know anything about the dog or the breed's needs. Taylor gets annoyed and tells Rachel to fuck off. I can say it's pretty without saying I'm going to take it home.
yeah, this is a big problem with not just dogs, of course, any sort of animal ownership is that people get into it because they like the look of the animal or they like, oh, it'll be so cute to own a
Sugar glider.
yeah.
Like those things
They're
you can get
wonderful.
your hands on them, but they take lots and lots of work. And they
Uh-huh.
just like look like cute little things, you know?
Yeah. I mean, some of my family is involved with doing helping with a cat rescue here in Boise.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they do is they're very careful about like interviewing people and making certain that the house is good and the people understand what they're getting into because people so often just don't.
Mm-hmm.
And even with a relatively low maintenance pet like a cat, there's still a lot that you have to do to uh, have a house that will be accommodating for the pet, where you and they can live together in harmony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. When Rachel tries to move on, Taylor continues and demands Rachel acknowledge her and what she has to say. Taylor doubles down that she's seen as careful and cautious, though I'm not sure why, and she wouldn't add someone to her family without doing the proper research. Rachel doesn't reply. Taylor shares some baklava with her.
Yeah. Yeah. When Taylor gets up to play fetch with the dogs, Rachel offers her one of those ball thrower thingies that had been sticking out of her backpack. While she plays fetch with the dog, Taylor asks if Rachel can tell her about some of them. Rachel, who Taylor continues to refer to in her head as bitch throughout the chapter, tells her that Sirius, the dog with heartworm, was bought as a puppy for a tween. When he grew up and was too wild for the family, they caged him outside and neglected him. When he had gotten an infected foot from the neglect, the family dropped him off at the animal shelter, and he was due to be put down until Rachel swiped him.
Serious, huh? A large black dog, I assume.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A
Yeah, of
black
course.
lab.
Taylor empathizes with Rachel and Cirrus and asks how she knows all of this. Rachel says she used to volunteer at some shelters, and they let her know if there's a dog who needs another chance. Not many that don't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh,
And the dog that Taylor thinks is pretty is named Bullet. She was used to warm up dogs before fights, and her shoulder was torn up. Taylor asks why Rachel's power doesn't heal Bullet's shoulder or Angelica's eye. Apparently, Lisa says it has to do with the dog's blueprint. And then Vic had written wrong again, Lisa, but I am unsure what that means. I think that this actually may be correct. That the first time that Rachel uses her power on a dog, it kind of like has a status quo that it goes back to. So, as far as I can tell from just like what happens in the books, I don't know. I couldn't
sure. I mean, but
confirm or
one
deny
of
with any
one thing she
articles.
mentions that like she can cure things that exist before power is used in them, as long as it's like something rather recent. Was my thought, right?
Um,
Isn't that what she's saying here?
well, it seemed as though like physical injuries like the shoulder or the eye or the ear wouldn't be healed, but like for some reason cancer was healed even if they've had it for a long time.
Hmm.
So it's more like disease will go, but physical damage in a way won't. And like powers have a lot of delineations that are like this that are kind of arbitrary, like the line at which fault line can cut an object, you know what I mean? Like when does it become wood? It's just sort of like the power has some point that it picks of like I don't know, something. So,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the point is that I don't know the exact line here, and
yeah.
I don't know if we ever get real answers on it.
Yeah, I'm the main reason I'm like not sure about it is because the wrong again Lisa feels like there's some strong argument for why she would be wrong, whereas like it kind of seems more or less right to me. I guess
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. But moving on.
Yep. After some quiet, neither of them are socially adept enough to keep a conversation going. Rachel says, "Too bad dogs can't have trigger events. If they did, some people might think twice." Taylor silently disagrees, but decides to keep it to herself. Is like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Imagine a dog having a trigger event. Just imagine.
wouldn't that be crazy?
Uh huh.
Um, Unfortunately, this very cute scene is broken up by sounds of human chaos. Rachel is like, "These fuckers again," and whistles to her dogs. When Taylor asks what's going on, Rachel tells her to stay inside. From inside, Taylor approaches a boarded up window to view the scene. A group of 7 people aged around 12 to 30 wore t shirts with the number 83 scribbled on, confirming to Taylor that these are white supremacists with the Empire 88. Um,
Yeah, they like their shitty numerical ciphers.
yeah, indeed.
One of the
Um,
older men held a carton of empty beer bottles and shattered one against the door. "We told you to get out of here," he sneered at her. "I was here first. Doesn't matter. We're claiming this neighborhood, and that barking is driving me up the fucking wall. You've said so before. Try earplugs."
I was just reading 2 plus 4 times 5 said, "Imagine Crypto except as a villain. That would be terrifying because no hero would want to beat up a dog."
Oh my gosh, that's true. Yeah.
Is Crypto the
Just
Superman
imagine
Doge?
just imagine like on the front page of the newspaper, just Aegis punching a dog. Mm-mm. That won't fly.
Oh no! Master Stranger puppy that always steals sandwiches, says Vale. 2 plus 4 times 5 says yeah. So it is the Superman dog with the like the little tiny cape and stuff. Um, Hilarious. Um, but
I mean,
anyway,
especially if he does keep the cape.
yeah, man, the tiny cape is so funny because it's just like it barely goes down his back at all. But it's more like a kerchief. Um, So he threw another bottle at Rachel and said they can't do business in these conditions. Rachel's like, "Then don't do business." The man says they've been thinking they might soak hot dogs in antifreeze and then throw them over the fence. At this point, Taylor starts to panic. She doesn't have a mask or any costume. Idiot.
Yep.
You know.
Wasn't prepared. Again.
Mm.
Tisk tisk. Excuse me. Rachel argues that if he wanted to, he would. That's a TikTok reference, says Vic. Uh, I'll take your word for it.
Same. I don't never know them at all. I just not part of my life. But
Yep. Then Rachel says, "Either you're too scared to really do something about it, which you should be, or Kaiser told you hands off." It was the last attitude I would have expected from her. Bitch, being level headed?
yeah. Um, the man says that he'll just tell Kaiser they started it. Rachel is rightfully astounded and infuriated that she's being challenged here with all her dogs around. This is responded to by a teenage boy aiming and cocking a gun at Rachel.
Sorry, I just realized that line, like bitch, being level-headed, is the statement bitches be crazy, but flipped around.
God damn it. 2 plus 4 times 5 says, Tinker dog that makes Home Alone style physics based traps to mess with the pet sitter. Oh no. Yeah, dogs getting trigger events would be a nightmare for us all, I think.
I mean, I'd be most afraid of the combo mover master dog who uses his powers to play basketball.
Oh no. Yeah.
Anyways, the lead shithead says his son wants to join the Empire 88, and killing Rachel will be a good way to get in. Taylor does not wait. Either party starting violence here is probably going to be lethal. She pulls what bugs she can find in the area into a swarm, and makes them crawl all over her in a thick layer as an impromptu costume. Ugh, Taylor, some of those bugs were busy eating dog poop. And then, William, you said, way to interrupt a meal.
Yeah. Anyway, Taylor is rightly horrified this first time she pulls on the bug veil. We'll see her do this a lot in the future, but in those cases, she's typically wearing her costume or she's using bugs of her own that she keeps relatively clean compared to these unfortunate circumstances. She considers getting a gym membership to take an infinite shower and not run out of hot water while she recovers from this.
Yeah, I like Vale says, imagine a thinker power on a dog, figuring out ways to get their owner to stay home. I could imagine that really easily turning into a horror story, to be honest.
Yeah. Just as all parahumans who cannot communicate to the outside world become a horror story.
Yep. Continuing onward, Taylor hears a gunshot, but also hears conversation resume, and assumes it was a warning shot. She texts the rest of the Undersiders asking for backup. Taylor is an effective texter under pressure. So is Brian. Good job, team.
This half of the team. But Taylor reflects...
Yes. We'll get to the other half next chapter.
Yeah. Taylor reflects on how being completely covered in bugs is uncomfortable. Just imagine if you weren't controlling them, Taylor.
Yeah. Well, someone might have experienced that. A few someones.
Yeah. When Taylor mentions it being hot, it really reminded me of those bees that will vibrate on their opponents to heat them up, because like the other side dies a few degrees before the bees die, so they can vibrate them to death and then cool off before they also expire.
Yeah, I seem to remember that's like a thing they have against hornets and some other invaders in hives. Just coat them in bees.
Because they can't actually defeat them, like, no matter how many bees there are. Like, with stingers and like, bites, they can't defeat one of the hornets. There could be, like, literally unlimited of them.
So instead, we'll just bake them.
Yeah, exactly.
Taylor walks outside, still covered in layers of swarming insects. Everyone is completely fine with that. Yes, they're completely fine. Jesus fuck! A 20-something skinhead cursed as I moved to Bitch's side. I had a vague sense of what I must have looked like. A tower of swarming insects with vague human definition to it, giving the loose shape of a head, with vague indents in the face where my eyes were. Even Bitch's eyes widened a fraction as she saw me.
Yeah.
That's reasonable.
One of the Empire grunts quietly talks to the boy with the gun. Would you do the honors and deal with this amateur horror show? Taylor thinks of Park Ji-hoo and thinks the only difference here is that the boy doesn't hesitate. He shoots Taylor's swarm right in the chest. I think there's more differences than that, Taylor. But
yeah, these guys are ready for violence.
Yeah, they suck.
Yep. Unfortunately for them, Taylor has anticipated this and is crouched on the ground, the swarm remaining above her in a humanoid shape. The shot passes a couple inches above Taylor's head. And I'm going to read this part too.
Mm-hmm.
I'd borrowed a trick from Gru, and figured it only made sense to borrow one from Tattletale too. When I spoke, I hissed the words. And at the same time, I had every bug in the swarm make noise, buzzing, chirping, and droning in time with my words, doing everything I could to sound less human. Guns are not going to work when my body is like this.
Yeah. When I first read this, I thought, man, her power's been expanding in a lot of ways. Maybe someday she will be able to become Bug Pile. I thought that would be pretty cool.
She has pretty fine control. So, she can't disincorporate herself into bugs. But
I know, but that's what I thought, because I didn't understand the powers very well yet.
Mm.
Oh, 2 + 4 × 5 says the Japanese honeybees don't have stingers, IIRC, so they tackle the giant hornet and vibrate to raise the bee ball's temperature to the exact value necessary to boil the hornet while the bees are fine. Yeah. Bee ball.
Yeah.
And they always lose one bee when they're doing it, because they have the decoy bee, and so it's truly a team sport, because a couple bees are wandering around knowing that they're the decoy bees. It's crazy. Anyway, Taylor steps forward menacingly. Taylor thinks of Telltale pretending to have powers she doesn't. Most of her strats are just from watching other speedrunners. Most of these thugs start to move away, but the grunt puts out an arm and keeps the boy with the gun from running. Shoot, boy! And then, did you want me to read this part too?
Yeah, it's...
Yeah. The teenager obeyed, firing thrice more into the swarm, aiming too high to hit me. 2 more shots struck where my chest would have been. The third passed through my fake head. Head in, half quotes. What are they? Apostrophe style quotation marks.
I think it's just called single quotes.
Single quotes.
The boy changes targets to bitch. Nuh-uh. Taylor isn't going to let that slide. She lunges forward, drawing her knife and stabbing the boy in the thigh. Between that and bitch dodging, she avoids getting shot.
Okay, so 2 + 4 × 5 said the temperature range has to be within under 5 degrees Fahrenheit for it to work. Yeah, I remember it being very, very close between where the bees die and where the hornets die, where it's just they have to do it exactly right. And then 2 + 4 × 5 says eusocial insects are OP. And Taylor's power is literally to turn all insects into eusocial insects, where she is their queen, and have them with perfect control. So yes, they indeed are OP.
As demonstrated.
Yeah. For the sheer audacity of attacking a team member, Taylor drops her swarm on the boy, then stabs him in the palm, then, on an impulse, slashes his forehead. He screamed frantically and struggled to crawl away. Fair enough?
Yeah. Taylor just showing again that
that's just
she's willing to go the distance.
Exactly.
Although she does say, it was more brutal an approach than I might have liked. But as I interpreted it, any effect I generated by injuring him like this would hopefully prevent others from joining the fight. It would lead to less people getting hurt in the long run.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that showmanship thing where she's trying to use the intimidation factor to almost de-escalate things by making it seem so by seeming so big, they back off.
I can't help but think that this sort of stands in as another repetition sort of the same idea as Lung expressed in The Birdcage, where he's like, oh no, yeah, if you want to avoid trouble here, one of the things you can do is seem so crazy that no one's going to call you on anything. And Taylor's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yep.
I'll seem like I'll drop a bunch of bugs on you and stab you a bunch of times. Anyone else? Any
Exactly.
takers?
Yeah. So, I think,
Yeah,
was it me
I
reading
can.
here? Or?
That's probably you because this whole bit is like together.
Gotcha. So, bitch growls at the retreating Empire 88 thugs. This territory is ours. Leave. Tom, still mindless with pain and fear, jumped at that command. He tried to pull himself to his feet and failed, falling to the ground again with a ragged scream. When he reached out, imploring his friends for help, the skin of his hands and face were almost completely covered in bugs and blood. It did a lot to help spook the rest into a retreat. Most of them fled.
Oh, Taylor.
It's good.
Yeah. The grunt cautiously helps Tom limp away. Skitter and Bitch win. The grunt does threaten to tell Kaiser about the fight, though. Sure, go whine to Daddy.
Yeah. He's all, Kaiser will hear about this. I think this reader doing the, like, shitheads was so funny.
Yeah, and Skitter and Bitch are unfazed by this threat, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Taylor apologizes for stepping in. Honestly surprised Bitch doesn't jump on this, but she's being unusually diplomatic today. Taylor says that the Empire might come again, this time with more firepower. But Bitch says she'll manage and rebuffs Taylor's attempt to get her to move elsewhere.
Bitch says he's going to go pick up after the dogs, and Taylor offers to help. She only whistled twice for her dogs to follow her back inside, glancing back to see they were still following. She looked at me, and I wasn't entirely sure, but I thought maybe she didn't look as angry as she usually did. Aw, Bitch.
Yeah. So do we got any all final chapter thoughts here about this generally?
I think it's very sweet seeing this like relationship develop. I say that even though this chapter involves Taylor horrifyingly swarm, stab, and then have a guy covered in like bees and blood, trying to crawl away while screaming. Just a normal sort of domestic scene.
Yeah. And I love the bug pile. Yeah. I mean, I like all the things you said too, but I really like first gen swarm clone.
Mm-hmm. Also, just like the sort of visual of like you got this swarm clone, and then it just sort of collapses on this poor guy, just bleh.
Yeah, and this isn't the only time she does that. Like later on, she'll have them like multiple of them like running tackle somebody, which has got to look even crazier. You know what I mean? Just bonkers. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I think we can hop along to 7.4.
Let's do it.
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Sure, I can start.
Cool.
Taylor is mortified that Brian sees her handling dog poop, uncovered in paw prints and grass stains. How embarrassing!
Exactly. Brian, ever the gentleman, doesn't comment that on the dogged state of Taylor. Instead, he opens with, "There's bullet holes in the front door." Which, come to think of it, could be true if Bullet the dog was able to chew some holes in the front door. We could have many meanings to this. He's arrived in costume, but he's still basically just in motorcycles. So he seems like a normal person with the visor flipped up on his helmet, so you can just see his face. And he's not shrouding himself in darkness. So
yeah, that's a big advantage of his costume. Is it's basically just normal clothing that someone might be expected to wear.
Yep. It's
so he can flip between the two very quickly. Although it also does make it a lot easier for someone else to make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
If they ever see him without darkness.
Yeah, but without the darkness, or like with the darkness, he's so like constantly like shrouded and stuff. It feels like that it almost. I guess he doesn't
Yeah.
always.
Well, I guess the problem is that it takes like one misstep to have that
Right,
sort of information
right.
leak.
I see what you're saying. But that's why it's got to
Anyway,
be generic-ish.
yeah, fair. Anyways, Brian is flabbergasted that the pair is still here. My call, Bitch told him. It's a bad call, he admonished her.
Yeah. So Brian asks if her pride is worth risking getting the dogs hurt. Uh, Bitch does not really have an answer for this. Taylor follows up by reminding Bitch of the threat to use antifreeze soaked hot dogs to poison her dogs. It's cowardly, Bitch spat the words. They're cowards, I told her. Pretty much the definition of anyone who joins a hate group. Owned.
Owned. Yeah, owned. But even more than that, if the Empire shows up in force, Bitch has no chance on her own. And she can't be here 24/7 anyhow. Bitch is a stubborn bitch, though, and insists that she can handle herself.
Taylor isn't willing to give up, though. If she loses her patience here, Bitch would win the argument. So she goes on the offense, or on the offense. Isn't it better to rely on us to actually handle this instead of going it alone, hiding and letting those fuckers have the power?
Yeah, that's sort of a lot of the balance against people like that. That you pushing back is impossible when they can attack you essentially whenever they feel like. So, um, it's gotta go around.
Mm-hmm.
Bitch insists that she won't hide, but Taylor and Brian present a unified front. Protecting her and the dogs is the top priority. After that, they can deal with any threats. And Brian assures her that they will be dealt with. Not answering this aggression from the Empire won't hurt just Bitch. It will hurt the whole group's reputation at a time when they sorely need it.
So, Bitch is finally convinced, but she's also convinced that Taylor and Brian want to, like, do the fuck with each other.
Oh my
Um,
god.
Brian heads around to the front door and is going to call Coyle on the way inside. Taylor's self-consciousness is reaching critical levels when she waves goodbye in an uncool way. Wow, what a loser.
Yeah, there's a
Uh,
whole paragraph on Taylor being like, oh my gosh, that was so uncool.
I can't believe I waved like that. And because of this, Rachel takes the moment to assess the situation and give Taylor, her new friend, dating tips. After asking Taylor if she likes Brian, and Taylor forcing herself to tell the truth, there's a brief moment where Taylor gives Rachel dibs on going out with Brian if she wants. Then Rachel gives her the advice. You should offer to sleep with him. What? I stammered.
Yeah, Bitch has a predictably but wonderfully straightforward view on the subject. They want to get it on, and stop dancing around it like awkward teenagers. Unfortunately, Brian and Taylor are awkward teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's more complicated than that. It's complicated because people make it complicated. Just cut the bullshit and go for it.
Yeah, so Taylor realizes that Bitch is offering her advice? She realizes that this is Bitch being nice and belatedly offers thanks. Um,
Yeah, I think this is. I think it's mentioned in chapter as well. This is like a second sort of beat of bitch being supportive in a bitch way. The first one being back at the Forsberg Gallery when she defended Taylor to Armsmaster.
yeah, when she said that Taylor could kick his ass.
Yeah, and Taylor's like, "Bitch, please stop."
Mm-hmm. You can tell when Greg wrote it because Greg always writes bitch, and then if Vic or I wrote it, we always write Rachel.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I you can see all these parts here. I write Taylor and Brian, and then I write bitch. But to be fair, I think that Rachel has a much closer. Uh, her life is much more tied in with that super villain side than Taylor's or Brian's or even Lisa's are.
And
She
that's how
she she
Taylor
lives
thinks
full
of her
time.
at this
Yeah, she
point
lives
in the
full time as
story.
bitch.
I know what you mean, but uh it's like notable and I pull it out later about how like she thinks of Brian in terms of Brian and then switches to Gru when he puts the faceplate down and stuff. Um
Yeah, I mean, I think early on Taylor's not great at that distinction necessarily, but even at this point in the story and forward, she becomes very good at drawing that line and being like, okay, switch the switch is flipped. It's now super villain time or it's normal time.
Right, but that's the thing is that Rachel throughout the story breaks those bounds because even when later when she starts calling her Rachel in her head, she mostly calls her Rachel like all the time.
Mhm.
Whereas like the others, she still tries to like differentiate one and the other. And I know that Rachel also has like the public identity thing, but it really is just I think she holds a totally different place in her mind. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And 2 plus 4 times 5 says Rachel is great. Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure where we on
We're right
this.
here. Yep.
Is
Bitch lets
this?
Brian
Yeah, you.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor is frightened the bitch will give Brian. Sorry, the bitch. Taylor's frightened the bitch will spill the beans to Brian, but she does not.
Um, I got this weird moment in my head when I read "Spill the Beans" on the page in all caps, where I couldn't stop hearing Scarlett chanting "Beans, beans, beans." For yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I missed that. Brian hasn't been able to get a hold of Coyle, and Taylor notes that neither Lisa nor Alec responded when she sent out the text for backup. Uh, Clearly, dear readers, trouble is afoot.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your restraint in reading that line.
Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't put on the full Brad Neely voice.
yes. Brian asked Taylor to stay with Bitch, but the dog queen is having none of it. No, Bitch spoke. I don't need babysitting, and I'm getting annoyed being badgered by you two. Taylor goes with you. I'm going to stay here and pack up.
Yeah. Um. Vale says trouble is afoot. Wait, what? Um. Well, just trouble at the other undersiders not responding to their text messages. Um.
Oh, I think this might just be an idiom that's unfamiliar. Yeah, it just means that there is trouble.
Okay, yeah. Um. Anyway, so Taylor asks what happens if Bitch is attacked again, and if they take a dog hostage, one that Bitch can't use her power on yet. A dark look passed over her face as she considered that. Then I run, and I get revenge another day, on my terms. It goes unsaid here, but I think she'd definitely power up an untrained dog if it got captured. Um,
Maybe I think she's cautious about doing it in a circumstance where the dog could get out and just like go anywhere because
I'm
powered up
saying that I
dogs.
think that she would do it in desperation.
Oh yeah, possibly.
Um, Oh, Vale
Anyway,
says, remind me that sarcasm does not translate to text chat. Next time I try subtle sarcasm, please. Okay. Sorry.
yeah, it's hard to do on the internet. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Anyways, Brian is happy to have Taylor along for any trouble that pops up, but clearly isn't pleased with the whole bitch sitch. But there's not much to be done until Coil can be reached to arrange dog transport. In the meantime, stay alert and don't get yourself killed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Two
Yes.
plus four times five. So just use the sarcasm font, and it's the alternating lowercase uppercase font.
Mm-hmm.
Brian is happy to have Taylor along for any trouble that pops up, but clearly isn't pleased with the whole. Oh no, that's what you just said. Taylor and Brian, this is what I mean to say, leave to check on the other Undersiders. On the way, Taylor gives Brian the deets on what happened. Funny that it's Kaiser that's having trouble controlling his people, Brian mused when I was done.
Taylor points out that Coil has been upping the pressure on Kaiser. Brian responds, You're defending him? It wasn't often that I felt acutely aware of the difference in our skin colors, but being asked if I was making excuses for the white supremacist supervillain was one of those moments. I don't want to underestimate him, is all, I said. Well, that's awkward, Taylor.
It's not so bad. I don't think he isn't annoyed with her in the next moment, so it's not that bad. But I get the point of the scene playing out as it does, but neither of them consider what I think Kaiser is probably actually doing, which, like, I think he wants stuff like this to happen so he can have the attack happen, and then later, if he's confronted about it, he'll be like, well, I let my lieutenants do as they see fit and don't oversee the exact details. Because he's just, like, such a little piece of shit like that. And he's always doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and I think the guys even mentioned, like, yeah, we have plausible deniability attacking here. There was barking before we arrived. Like,
Exactly.
I think it's a sort of, weaselly nonsense you'll get from Kaiser.
Yeah. So.
Anyways, yeah. Taylor and Brian discuss Bitch. She's a source of conflict with other groups, especially the Empire because of their dogfighting rings, but brings a lot to the table. The conversation turns to how the day with Bitch went. How was she? Any fights? Nothing serious. No, it was actually kind of nice. I might even do it again if she let me. Really? He replied, skepticism clear in his tone. Really? What changed? I'm figuring her out, I think. How she operates, how she thinks.
Yeah. I think she's right. She's doing a pretty good job. Um, and then Brian is once again flabbergasted. He's been on a team with Bitch for nearly a year and is always butting heads with her. Taylor gives him some bitch handling advice. Brian's an authority in the group, but Bitch cannot help but test authority when she's feeling insecure. If Brian takes a more official leadership position, it might stabilize the relationship.
Yeah, Taylor is really picking up her team role here as the bitch whisperer.
Bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Brian is frustrated as it's always. Oh, Brian's frustrated as it's already been 10 months since the group got together. It doesn't seem like Rachel trusts him yet. And then Taylor asks how many years she has gone without any parents, teachers, or bosses in her life, and he relents. Tell me she hasn't gotten at least a little better in the course of these 10 months. Marginally.
2 plus 4 times 5 whispers, bitch.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Taylor has to mini jog to keep up with Brian when he fast walks, which doesn't tire her out because of her running, but embarrasses her, which is much funnier than tiring her out. They make good time getting back to base. And then,
Dun, dun, dun.
um, you want to just jump into the next uh,
Oh, yeah.
paragraph.
Well, I'm going to take a second here to appreciate the art as it comes in. Sorry.
Oh, sure, sure.
But then, yes, I'll continue reading here. Arriving back at the loft and expecting trouble, Brian cloaks himself in darkness and Taylor pulls bugs over her face. There's a moment here where Taylor makes the intentional mental shift from Brian to Gru, which is more notable since she still full time refers to Rachel as bitch in her head. Brian puts darkness on the front door, then the stairs, then the upstairs door, silencing their movements each step of the way. There's a single sentence paragraph that kinda bait and switches the scene. I didn't anticipate the scene in the living room of the loft. Then they find Alec and Lisa relaxing on couches, watching TV and talking on the phone. Brian is not pleased.
Yeah. Um, Lisa's busy having a conversation, and it sounds important. She points Taylor to her laptop. Upon reading the email Lisa's opened, Taylor feels dread creeping up on her. She scrolls down and down, and then back up to check who had been CC'd on. Fuck, I muttered. Fuck!
Yep,
Also, though,
it's it. Go ahead.
now that it's fully up, I love all the pictures that have Gru's darkness in them. Like, It's such a cool effect.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Yep. It's the Empire 88, all of the capes, and many high-ranking members. Full names, professions, addresses, phone numbers, pictures in and out of costume. Full doxing. The list went on. And on.
Yeah. The information is comprehensive and convincing, and it's been sent not just to Lisa, but a bunch of news organizations.
Coyle is the source of the leak. Lisa helped him get some of the information, but didn't know he was going to be doing this with it. I don't agree with it, she said. It's crossing a line. It's not just messing with the enemy. There's going to be a ton of collateral damage.
As for why they didn't respond when the request to the request for backup, Lisa's using a new burner and was relying on Alec to notice any communication from the team. And as Greg wrote here, Alec gonna Alec. But then I pulled this quote: "Part of being a member of this team is being on call if we need you. I swear," Brian growled at Alec, "I'm gonna kick your ass so hard."
Yep. That sort of moment where Alec checks his phone is like, oh, fuck. It's great.
Yeah. Good.
Taylor's concerned that the timing is a gambit by Coyle, trying to force the Understars into agreeing to his proposal. Lisa shook her head forcefully. I don't get the sense of anything like that, and that's not how his power operates. Besides, he expected we would agree anyways. He wouldn't jeopardize that with a gambit like this. It's too crude.
Yeah. So she says.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, the Empire is going to be riled up. Riled up! And when Skitter and Bitch were just fighting them and have Tattletale in their roster, the Undersiders have a giant target painted on them.
Yeah, it looks. And I mean, in the future, everyone, like pretty much everyone, assumes that the information leak is Tattletale's fault. Which, a little bit, but not really.
Yeah. So this kind of sticks with them, even though it literally wasn't them.
Yeah, well, I mean, not only is she a noted information gatherer, but her name is literally Tattletale in costume. So
I think in a way they use it for rep too, though. So,
mhm.
because like people both don't want to argue against it too hard because even though it breaks the rules, it was against the white supremacists, and also in addition to that, like people are still worried that it will happen to them, even though it hasn't happened to a second group.
Yeah.
But yeah. Final chapter thoughts. Um, from you or me.
Sure. I mean, I think this is a nice sort of relatively calm beat between the violence of the previous chapter and the rest of the arc, where things are going to get pretty heated.
Oh, it gets crazy. Um, yeah. I guess this arc's version of like a slow chapter because just stuff's
Yeah,
happening left and right for the rest of it. I swear, even when
yeah.
it seems like it's gonna be slow, it's like in a bookstore, gets smacked by a book and ear grabbed.
Well, I mean, half the chapter is just Brian and Bitch and Taylor talking, or Brian and Taylor talking about Bitch. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's a character building moment.
Yeah, and it's just we learn a lot about what the characters think about each other and what they're willing to say about each other also.
Mm-hmm.
Um and yeah, it really I think that both of these chapters really demonstrate that I think Taylor kind of does get Rachel now. Um
Yeah, there's been a definite shift in how Taylor deals with Bitch and how well she's able to handle her. She's got her more dialed in now,
mm-hmm,
which
mm-hmm.
is good for her. showing us that really Taylor can be socially adept in her own way, even though like she fell out of favor at school, but she does have those skills.
Right, right. Um, let's move down to the characters, I guess.
Sure.
And so Rachel is a whole bunch of Rachel.
Yeah, I
She's
think. Go
you
ahead.
go, I was gonna say she's cool under pressure, and she doesn't flip out when those people are there. Uh,
Yeah, I was gonna say I think we see Bitch being relatively diplomatic here, pretty much to all parties involved, including the Empire folks. She doesn't flip out, as you say, uh, despite having quite a lot of provocation. And she also is dealing with Taylor fairly kindly at this point, which is very nice as well. For Bitch,
yeah.
there's a certain leveling here involved in who you're dealing with. But for Bitch, I would say that she's in a good mood this chapter.
Mm-hmm. Things go well uh with Taylor, I think, in a way that maybe Rachel only feels on like a subconscious level. But I just feel like the in a very short amount of time, Rachel's like, okay, okay, I'm willing to keep this going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Brian doesn't really understand where Taylor's coming from.
Yeah, and he doesn't understand where Bitch is coming from either, really, when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for
Part of
sure.
it part of the whole bit of that last chapter is just Brian being like, I've been on a team with her for months, and you understand it better than I do, having just arrived. A
Yeah.
large part of that, though, is I think that you really have to make an effort to reach out. And with someone like Bitch, they're going to appear to like normal human social senses to be extremely standoffish. She doesn't want you here. Her hackles are up. She's growling. Um, which will make most people back off. But Taylor is bowled right through it. But Brian has remained at a distance, which has left him still in that situation. He hasn't shifted it really.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I was gonna say as well that he and Taylor were on the same page before, and now they're not. So like that's part of why he's perturbed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't have that much more to say about it. He's real mad about Alec. So that's my other Brian comment, but
Yeah,
that's obvious.
which is entirely fair because
Mm-hmm.
if you need backup and your teammates are busy playing, I don't know, Halo, whatever they're playing back then,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to be in a happy situation, and hopefully you'll survive through these circumstances to come and be angry at them afterwards. But
Yeah.
it's not guaranteed because they can get into some hairy situations here.
Mm-hmm. And things start getting even crazier. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess Lisa, um, she's kind of this is indicative of a lot of stuff she's been doing, I think, in the past year of her life, where she's like, I helped him with this thing, but I don't approve of what he's doing with the thing. Um, with the information release, it's real wishy washy, if you ask me.
Yeah, to be fair, like her arm's getting twisted for a lot of these things,
Yeah,
so
yeah, I know.
I can't really put too much blame on her for this.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where I really do think that she's kind of like maybe she's only saying it for them, but it feels like she's thinking it for herself too. Like she's lying to herself about kind of her level of participation.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think that this sort of like big input up like this would be her style anyways. I think she preferred to use the information more as a tactical level thing as opposed to a strategic level thing, really.
Right,
where
right.
she can leverage information like this very effectively herself. But uh, putting it out like this really does indeed paint a target on their back in particular, and just lets the opponents know that you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not. Yeah, from the way she would use the information, she would probably keep it a secret that she knew who they were, use the information, and continue to ramp up the public image of being a psychic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because like that suits her aims very well. So
Agreed.
yeah. And then Alec.
Oh,
He's
Alec.
Alec.
Yep.
Um, Coil. Uh, he does have a
We don't.
snake on his costume.
It's true. We don't get to see him in this chapter or hear from him, which actually is notable because Brian had actually tried to contact him as part of the getting back up for bitch uh, situation,
I think the
and he
claim
doesn't
could be
respond.
made that he was on the phone uh with Tattletale,
Lisa,
but
yeah,
I think that that's like one of those hollow like Kaiser claims, just fake as shit.
sure. And I mean, like, he has tons of underlings. Surely there must be someone who can take a call and be like, "Yes, he's busy, but we'll send some folks."
2 + 4 × 5. Coil, more like oil, snake oil. That is. Oh man,
A slippery fellow.
they even replied, like snake oil. So
Yeah,
yes,
what's
we
he
both
peddling?
completed the joke at the same time. Um. Uh.
Hmm. Yeah.
He's a real
He
snake
really
oiler.
is painted in a very unforgiving light. Which, to be fair, he is terrible. But
I think there's a lot more neutral reads that you could have on him here. I just think it's. I think that we've already said enough in the past that it's clear that we think Coil is sneaky snack.
mhm.
Um.
I guess that I would say, especially if you're trying to make this proposal to the Undersiders, you say, "Hey, we want to do this partnership. We want to take over the city, do a whole thing," and they get into a tricky situation and reach out to you for your help, and you are completely incommunicado. It puts you in a bad light, right, for those negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't have something, because it just isn't a good look for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um. Yeah. I don't know. I think he really did want to just write off scot free on the. Oh well, I was already on the phone with Tattletale. I thought she would be in communication with you, and then that would be his dumbass play. But in any case, moving on to the doxed. There's a whole
Yeah.
the bunch of super powered guys.
Yeah, I mean, we as readers already had them doxed to it, at least some of them doxed to us before, because uh we saw Max, good old Kaiser, we saw Purity, Caden, and there saw their kids mentioned. Some of the others though, like Krieg, whatever else,
Well, I think
hadn't
that
really
helps
been.
lend credence to this, to where we know, we can assume that they're correct because we know from our own experience that at least two of them are definitely correct.
That's fair. That's true. Yeah, it lets us know, hey, this information is in fact accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Although the chapter goes out of its way to be like, yeah, this is very convincing stuff. There's tons of like evidence on people. There's not just like the photos. There's additional like zip files full of corroborating evidence linking these people, linking their civilian and cape identities, and then linking them to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and we only hear about, I think, like 5 or 6 of them. We hear about Kaiser Purity, Fenya Menya, Krieg. uh, Hookwolf, and I think that's it on the little thing. But then there's like 15 of these motherfuckers.
Yeah, it mentions that all the capes got added. So
Yeah,
absolutely everyone in the organization that has a power has had their civilian identity revealed.
yeah, and I don't know if there's ones that we just never hear about, but even the 15 that we do hear about, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's spicy.
15 is a larger number than 5, actually. I've heard in the past.
Mm, I'll wait for a proof.
Yeah, good. Um, so is there anything more we want to say about any of the characters?
Not here, I think.
Okay. So, powers, knowledge, and world building. I wasn't sure if you pulled this out or if Vic did.
Vic did.
Okay, so I'm gonna read it. It's just a whole big paragraph. In any case, these numbers had been a way to keep one's racist feelings on the down low, around those that weren't already affiliated. Kaiser, or until Kaiser's predecessor formed Empire 88 here in Brockton Bay. The move had pushed an ultimatum on the more secretive racists in the area, forcing them to either join the aggressive, active group in the public eye or retreat further into hiding. It had also drawn crowds of the more die-hard white supremacists from the surrounding regions to Brockton Bay. When people with powers, Kaiser included, started to congregate in the group, Brockton Bay became something of a magnet for those sorts, one of the bigger collectives of racists above the Bible Belt, quite possibly the biggest congregation of racist supervillains. Um,
Yeah, that's a thing that really happens. You get if you have a notable racist community, by gum, you'll get a lot more of them flocking to it.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that's been happening even more in the last few years. Like pretty openly with places like a bunch of people moved to Whitefish, I think, in Montana, all at
Mm.
once, and it was a
I was
whole
also thinking
thing.
of just Idaho's history. We used to have a big Aryan Nation compound up in northern Idaho that
Mm-hmm.
eventually got raided and broken up, but
Well,
it was
there's
a
still a lot of
whole
militias
thing.
here. Like that's
Yeah,
that's the thing is I can think of like a half dozen militias off the top of my head. I'm not gonna name them, but there are a lot, and I probably don't know the half of it to be honest. So.
yeah. The thing is that it's the sort of problem that unless you address it, it just gets worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um.
Yeah. Any other
So.
comments on the Empire there before we move on?
Um. I thought it was weird the whole like the 8-3 thing, the Heil Christ, like it makes sense, but I just never would have thought of it before I read this book, even though I, should be able to connect the dots where like most historical Nazis were Christians and most American Nazis are also Christians. The fact that of course they'd have like Heil Christ as a thing they say.
Yeah, I had to look it up to see if it's real. It is. And ugh. Anyways,
Yeah.
moving onwards.
Yeah.
Uh, we have a cool instance of Taylor really developing some of her skills and adapting some of the techniques of her teammates to her own power with her bug body and bug speech.
Mhm. Yeah. Man, I'm loving it. She's getting a lot better with her power, I think. Like this is the first time where she's like, I really need bugs, and there was like, and I know it's the environment she's in and stuff, but I think that it's meant to like convey this feeling also that like she's so much better than she was that she was completely unprepared and she won. You know?
Yeah, completely unprepared. Out of costume, didn't have any swarms ready, wasn't expecting anything to happen today. Problems arise, she's able to pull all the things she needs together from what she
Yeah.
has in the environment.
And I know that these people are unpowered, but this was like an unequivocal win.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
And I mean, the trick she pulls out, she's deliberately thinking of Gru's using shadows, using darkness to mimic that his position is in one place while he's also someplace else. She does that very nicely with her bugs. It's a very cool technique, even in this sort of undeveloped form where she's still standing inside like a human-shaped bug thing. It really helps sell the idea to these Empire guys that oh dear, we can't shoot her. It just goes right through her bugs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they ever convinced somebody else of this. I think everybody in the future sort of catches on to the idea of what like swarm clones are, but
Mm-hmm.
these low information mooks, they're easily fooled.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you could definitely imagine a parahuman where this was their ability, and no one
Right,
really
right.
knows Taylor that well at this point. So,
Yes.
um, you just have to assume, oh no, she can turn to bugs and then swarm us and then stab us. It's trouble.
Yeah. Trouble with a capital T and a T that stands for Taylor.
I think it's a capital T that rhymes with B that stands for bugs.
Exactly. Um And then I said there's a nice little moment in 7-4 where we see the dogs learning from each other, dogs in the pack thing that Rachel had talked about, where most of the dogs stop barking and then the rest of them catch on. The little setups and payoffs are good on their own, um, and at letting us see how the dogs like act like Rachel said they would, and they sell like that sells the character of Rachel as like this knowledgeable person without having to beat you over the head with it. Where like just the things she says are correct and we see examples of them.
Yeah, we get to see. I mean, it's a general thing with animals where, especially like pack animals, they'll take cues from each other. So if you have a few trained dogs, they can help socialize other dogs to be more calm and receptive around humans, to stop barking when it's important to stop barking, stuff like that. It's a good moment and shows that yeah, bitch actually is pretty good at handling these dogs and training them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um. Yeah. Uh. 2 + 4 × 5 had said, remember the teleport onto boxes trick in early Arc 11. I won't elaborate because spoilers. Teleport onto boxes. So Arc 11 has the... Oh, yeah, yep, I do. Where, yep. Now I know what you mean on the wood pallet to be like, "Look at me." Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Took me a second. Taylor does so much bullshit that like, and I love it, but she does so much bullshit that it's hard to remember every little thing right off right off the dome. So before audience participation, um, bonus game, because
Oh,
Vic was complaining about the unwritten rules. This was like saying that they're bullshit. So the bonus game that we came up with was we're gonna come up with a list of the unwritten rules and try and do it off the top of our head, see how fast we can do it, and then like call it done. And audience participation from you two is encouraged. So Greg, let's try and come up with the rules and supplement in anything that the other two can figure out.
okay. I think that I had two categories at the top of my head, which I think are important. One, the first one is, of course, the separation of the cape and civilian identities, where if you don't attack someone by using the civilian identity, and you don't use knowledge about the civilian identity to uh, interact with them in any way, like you don't attack them when they're out of costume, you don't reveal their identities, and so on. And along the same lines, you don't use any other like ancillary information about their civilian life, like their family members, or whatever else, to attack them. And then the second thing, I think, the second sort of pillar is violence, which is boxing gloves on. You don't go for lethal blows or like fates worse than death, because those are a escalation of force beyond which people accept. And as a weird corollary to that, don't use guns. And I think that's like the essence of it, those two things. Am I missing something?
All right, I think that's it. No.
Yes, I like Vale's non-consent equals birdcage or worse. Yeah, don't go tell people to go fuck themselves if you can really enforce that. Ha! Also, unwritten rules. You don't write them, especially not in chat. Yeah. Vale's got it.
Okay, cool.
See, yeah, 2 plus 4 times 5. You got tricked. You wrote those rules.
Yeah, 2 plus 4 times 5 said, don't murder anyone is one, and then said, oh yeah, don't permanently disable anyone with injuries is a good one. So I wrote, kid gloves on, which I guess needs to be expanded to, and I said includes gun claws, and that's expanded to the, don't permanently disable anyone. And then maybe don't attack civilians. That one's dicey. They attack civilians a whole lot.
I mean, don't attack civilians. I mean, don't cross that barrier. Like,
Yeah.
if they're a cape, you don't attack them in their civilian identity.
Yeah. But 2 plus 4 times 5 says maybe don't attack civilians. And I'm saying
Oh,
to
well,
that, I don't know that they really
yeah.
do believe in that.
I think it's more like you can attack civilians, but you're expected not to like cause mass casualties. There's, I think, strangely, a lot higher tolerance for pain and suffering by civilians than there is on capes. But
Yeah.
you're still not supposed to go around like making crowds of people explode.
Yeah. And then 2 plus 4 times 5 said amended. I don't know if that's really a thing, though, considering the hostages in the bank robbery. Vale said, wear the opponent's merch when you go out for burgers. Yeah, that's
Yes,
definitely like one of the main unwritten rules. I think I can say that it took us about 2 minutes to write down all the rules that kind of unwritten, and
sure, but I think they really just boil down to those two pillars: the don't cross like the boundary from cape to civilian when doing any sort of attack, and don't
kid
no
gloves on.
don't get murderous on purpose.
Yeah. Um, and then okay, I think we did pretty good. Bonus game achieved. And then there's the audience participation section where and I'm sure it took us longer than 2 minutes, but it was between 2 and 3 minutes. Um, discuss the outing of the Empire 88 secret identities and rules of the Cops and Robbers game. And so I'm going to start with Vale's answer here. The E88 outing was a scumbag move by a scumbag outing even worse scumbags, which is highly on point for the majority of Worm. Every choice is one weighing greater and lesser evils. In this case, the power move eradicates the E88 influence in Brockton Bay, opening the way for another horrible person to take over, but a somewhat lesser evil. The Cops and Robbers aesthetic sarcasm is interesting to view from local and global perspectives. Powerful parahumans are needed. Parahumans do parahumans things without a higher tier of justice, sadly but true also sarcasm, that allows this. There would be no defense against greater threats, another lesser of two evils, in this case, necessary.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the alternative to sort of letting this happen ends up being rather authoritarian. We see elsewhere in the world that there are different ways that nations deal with parahumans, and a lot of the other ways are very repressive towards parahumans.
And it doesn't really
But
work very well either.
no, yeah. Uh, both Russia and China have pretty big systemic problems. Those being the two notable ones I can think of that sort of fit that alternative mold.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yes.
Sorry, it sounded like you had more.
No, that's about it.
Okay. Yeah. I pretty much think that that you're right. It's like one of those things where like they kind of they do cross the line. But it's one of those things where like if I were really in the world, I'd be upset if I were like the Undersiders. But if I were like Fault Line, I'd be like, able to both say this crosses the line and be able to be like, oh, thank God that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in my
Yeah,
head, I would secretly be thinking that, because
yeah. I mean,
those
it's too close
bastards.
to the home for the Undersiders, but for a lot of other folks, especially if you aren't in the splash zone, yeah, this is great.
Yeah. Um,
No, nobody who's at stake here is a good person, so fuck them all.
right, and I mean, it ends up, like, spiraling out of control, as we'll see in a few chapters, but,
Yeah, I guess that is the real downside is not any of the parahumans involved, but the fact that this is going to cause a dramatic escalation of violence
mm-hmm,
puts a lot of people in a very troubling position. This is very much sort of the problem, like when Bakuda rose to power, is that it stops being just a parahuman problem. It starts being a everyone problem.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like a whole city problem. Like Bakudo was larger than whole city, but honestly, E88 is more like whole city.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Anywho, I can read the
yeah.
next one if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
2 plus 4 times 5 says the cops and robbers thing is just an excuse that the villains can use to justify pulling off not super awful crimes, whereas the heroes are legitimately stuck in the good cop position by the Protectorate's PR department. The heroes and villains aren't on particularly equal footing, unlike how the cops and robbers explanation would make it seem. Like, what's stopping the villains from being truly evil? The fear of stronger heroes getting called in and prioritizing the worst ones over the other, more moderate villains? That's not that big of a deterrent. Yeah, I mean, there's only so much force the Protectorate can bring to bear, even though they do have some truly heavy hitters. Like, if you cause way too much of a ruckus, I mean, how are you going to deal with Alexandria showing up? It's tough.
And the
But
honest
to be
thing
fair,
is, there's a lot of smaller people who get like kill orders and bounties racked up, and then there are like bounty hunter parahumans who just go around killing people.
yeah, I was going to say that there are some groups and even like singular villains who end up bad enough to warrant significant attention, but either scary enough that you can't really tackle them, or their power is indirect in some way, like Heartbreaker, where uh, it would cause trouble no matter what. Like you take him down, well, you got a whole bunch of heartbroken people who still are trouble.
hmm Yeah. Um, I was thinking of like on the other side of it, the like that bounty hunter that we see in Ward, who like he's more of just a mercenary now, but like when in this time frame he was like a bounty hunter who did kill orders, who in a direct sense wasn't breaking any laws. He was just kind of a an off-putting person who was a murderer for hire. Um,
Oh, well, yeah, that's a thing that should be mentioned. Is those kill orders? Those are like institutionalized murder. It gives a white flag to go out and kill someone, which is not something that our current justice system would ever really countenance. But feels like when there's this such a level of escalation in the Worm universe in what people can do
mm-hmm.
personally, that it's justified.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that character I think is really interesting because his power is like very parahuman, like anti-parahuman oriented. It like cancels powers within a like breaker effect or like a shaker effect where they're alone in there, and then he has found like things that still work in this weird environment, and then he
Mhm.
just kind of murks you with very unfair tactics.
So 2 plus 4 times 5 asks if Heartbreaker died, would his wife still love him? If so, how would that manifest? No, no, never mind. I'm just gonna stop that train of thought.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it.
word.
I don't know, but I think part of the problem there is that certainly before he dies, you've got like a whole horde of people who will literally throw themselves in front of bullets for him, and they're all innocent. So there's no getting out of this without it being just awful, just terrible. But in the meantime, like leaving him to wander about uh is also really horrible. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, there's not much to say about that.
Yeah. All right, and then those are our answers. And then, Greg, did you have an answer? I think we kind of discussed how we felt while we read the other answers.
Yeah, I think we did. And we covered the cops and robbers things a bit in the unwritten rules. That's sort of like the essence of the cops and robbers game is sort of following those rules to
Mm-hmm.
keep things from escalating past a keep things from escalating to a crazy point.
Right. Right.
You want a simmer, not a boil.
Mm-hmm. So, I was gonna say the question for next week is talk about the thing that happens with Brian and Taylor in 7.5 and or 7.6. You know the thing.
Ah, the
Or
thing.
if you haven't read the chapter, you'll read the chapter and then you'll know the thing.
Mm.
I'm gonna start up the outro music, and then from there I'm going to read the links. So that's
Cool.
starting up now. So the music in the episode at the opening and ending was Born in a Broken World on the documentary music playlist from CO.AG Music. You can find that on YouTube. Our Discord server can be found at, or the link can be found in the description of the video or in the description of the YouTube channel. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com, and there's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Last couple comments from the people. 2 + 4 × 5 said, The Thing, 1982, is my favorite horror movie. Yeah. Well, yes, I'm sure I said The Thing somewhere at some point, but Vale says, take care all, and 2 + 4 × 5 says, good stream.
Yes, thank you both for showing up.
Thank you as always, guys, for being in the chat, and thank you very much, Greg, for co-hosting this week. Do you have any final words? Anything?
No.
No.
No final words.
Okay.
I was about to say nitwit, oddment,
No.
tweet, whatever this is Dumbledore says, but...
And then you decided it better of it.
Yeah, briefly.
Briefly. Well, someday we'll decide better of it from the start. Goodbye,